Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we cut through the noise and get you informed fast. You know, it's easy to think of innovation as this single path forward, like it just happens. But when you really look globally, different countries are taking, well, vastly different approaches. Each path has its own incredible successes, sure, but also its own unique hurdles. Today, we're diving deep into two really distinct landscapes of tech advancement and industrial strategy. We're pulling insights from recent pieces in The Economist. First stop, China. We'll explore their big state-backed innovation push, ambitious stuff. Then we pivot back home, sort of to the unfolding story of electric vehicles, EVs, in the US, our mission. It's really to pull out the key nuggets from these sources, help us all understand the contrasting ideas, those aha moments, and, the big challenges shaping where tech is going. So by the end, you'll feel genuinely informed about these really crucial global trends. Ready to connect the dots yourself? Okay, let's unpack China's tech journey. For a long time, there was this narrative, right or wrong, of copycat manufacturing, but that story seems to have dramatically shifted.
Now, we keep hearing about China pushing for what they call new productive forces. So, what's really behind this shift? How are they trying to become a global leader in innovation?
It's a fundamental change in direction, really. New productive forces. It's basically a strategic pivot. They're aiming for high-tech, knowledge-based industries. Think AI, advanced manufacturing, biotech, clean energy, moving way beyond just, assembling things. And what's really fascinating here, I think, is the state's role. It's absolutely crucial. Unlike, say, the US or Europe, China's government isn't just creating a nice environment for business. No, they're actively shaping, sometimes even directly building these new industries from the ground up.
Actively shaping them. How does that work in practice?
Well, you see it with big initiatives like the big fund. That's their huge state-backed investment fund. It's pouring billions specifically into semiconductors, trying to catch up there. And then there are the massive subsidies for domestic industries across the board. It's like policymakers aren't just spotting existing strengths. One source said they're trying to detect or even create a given people through policy.
Wow, create a given people. That's quite a statement.
It is. And, while people in the West often dismiss China as just copying tech, if you look closely at their clean energy sector or what they're doing in AI, you see real innovation. They're actually emerging as leaders in some of these areas.
Okay, that's a key point.
Yeah.
But brings up this other idea we read about innovation versus involution. So this state-led push, it can definitely boost production, get things built fast, but does it genuinely foster breakthrough innovation? Or does all that state support just create fierce internal competition, maybe leading to, overcapacity within China itself?
That's the crux of it, isn't it? The potential downside, the aha moment maybe, is that this very strength, the state's ability to accelerate scale, could paradoxically stifle truly groundbreaking work. It can create this intense internal arms race.
An arms race?
Yeah.
How so?
Well, if the state is encouraging everyone to jump into, say, solar panel manufacturing, you get tons of companies doing roughly the same thing. Yes, production skyrockets, prices fall, but profits shrink drastically. And maybe more importantly, it might divert resources and brain power away from exploring completely novel, high-risk ideas, stuff that could really change the game. Instead, firms just focus on optimizing existing tech for a crowded home market.
So it becomes more about incremental improvements than big leaps.
Exactly. That's the risk of involution. Innovation happens, but it might lead to lower profits and maybe even stagnation in the long run. It's a very fine line they're walking.
Okay, to make this concrete, let's zoom in. The sources mention the city of Hefei. This isn't just any city. It's being deliberately built as an innovation hub, a real-world idea factory. How does Hefei show this state-led model in action? What are they actually doing there?
Well, Hefei's approach is super strategic. They're knitting together academia, government, and industry really tightly. They've set up things like a dedicated material science valley. They pour money into state-run labs. And they actively nurture startups. There was the example of Quantum Sectech, right? A leader in quantum communication.
That's right. Quantum Sectech grew out of the Chinese Academy of Sciences. And crucially, it got direct investment from the city government early on. This isn't just luck or organic growth. It's planned. It's engineered innovation.
A real idea factory at work.
Definitely. Hefei is impressive, no doubt. But connecting it back to the bigger picture, it also highlights the potential pitfalls we were just talking about. The very things that make Hefei successful, that heavy state backing, the targeted investments, can, on a national level, contribute to that overcapacity problem, that involution. Right. If every city tries to replicate Hefei's in the same sectors.
Exactly. You flood the national market, competition gets cutthroat, margins evaporate, even innovative companies can struggle to make sustainable profits.
So even with all that planning, what other downsides did the sources point out about this state-led model?
Well, beyond the involution risk, some critics argue that state-backed enterprises, while they have deep pockets and a mandate to push forward, they aren't always the most efficient. They might lack the sharp market discipline that private companies face constantly.
Less pressure to be lean and nimble, maybe?
Perhaps. And another interesting trend mentioned was foreign direct investment, FDI, into China. It's dropped significantly, down to just 0.6% of GDP, which is pretty low when you compare it to Chinese outbound investment that's around 2.0% of their GDP.
So more money leaving China from Chinese investors than coming in from foreign ones.
That seems to be the trend. It raises questions about capital flight, potentially, and maybe about the long-term health of relying so heavily on domestic capital and state direction. It's definitely a complex picture. Impressive achievements, yes, but also some real economic knots to untangle.
It really sounds like a dual reality then. China is this technological powerhouse pushing hard,
Okay.
but also grappling with these deep-seated economic complexities. The path forward isn't totally clear. Okay, so that's one major tech frontier, state-driven, top-down planning. Let's shift gears now. Let's turn to another huge global shift, the move towards electric transport. And let's look at how that's playing out here in the U.S., which feels like a very different kind of approach. The Biden administration has definitely signaled a strong push for EVs. We've got significant incentives, ambitious targets, but based on what you're seeing in the sources, is that push translating smoothly into reality? Or are there still some major bumps in the road slowing down widespread adoption?
That really is the million-dollar question, isn't it? The government push is undeniable. You've got the tax credits up to $7,500 for new EVs, and new emissions rules designed to accelerate things. But yeah, the transition isn't exactly frictionless. There are definitely critical hurdles.
Like what? What are the main sticking points for consumers?
Well, the classic ones are still very much alive. Range anxiety is still a big one, that fear of running out of juice miles from anywhere. Then there's the upfront cost. Even with credits, EVs can still be pricier than gasoline cars for a lot of people. But maybe the biggest factor, the one that really hits home for potential buyers, is the charging infrastructure. Is it available? Is it reliable? That's huge.
Yeah, the charging piece feels absolutely critical.
It is. If you can't charge your car easily, conveniently, and reliably, adoption is going to stall, no matter the incentives.
And that's where one company, Tesla, really made its mark early on, right? They didn't just build cars, they built the charging network too. They saw the whole ecosystem was needed.
Yeah.
How did their strategy shake things up? Well, their supercharger network, it was, and arguably still is, a game changer. What is it now? Over 10,000 stations across the U.S., something like that, generally offering a pretty smooth experience. And now in a really smart move, they're opening up that network to other car brands too.
Yeah, that's a big deal for compatibility, using the NACS standard.
Exactly. And they even thought about the user experience at the charger itself. Some stations have lounges, food options, making that wait time less painful. They really set a high bar.
They absolutely did. Tesla basically built the car and the highway, in a sense. But connecting this to the bigger picture, while Tesla forged ahead, the traditional automakers, the Detroit giants, they found this transition really, really tough.
How so? What are the specific struggles?
Well, look at Ford. Their EV division, the Model E unit, it reportedly lost a staggering amount, something like $4.7 billion just last year. And that's prompted them to delay some big investments in new EV plants.
Wow, $4.7 billion loss. That's serious.
It is. It shows the sheer scale of the challenge. It's not just designing a new car, it's retooling huge factories, changing entire supply chains, retraining workforces, trying to pivot a massive, century-old industrial machine towards a totally new technology. It's incredibly expensive and complex.
So Ford's hitting the brakes a bit. What about others, like Stellantis?
Stellantis seems to be taking a slightly different path. They've signaled they're prioritizing profitability over just chasing EV sales volume for now, which likely means a slower, more calculated rollout of electric models. They're banking on key new vehicles, like their Ram 1500 REV electric truck, to lead the charge, so to speak. But yeah, the struggles of the legacy automakers really underscore how difficult this pivot is, especially when the market's still developing and the infrastructure isn't fully built out.
Right. It all comes back to that infrastructure piece, especially charging. So for you, the listener, maybe considering an EV, what does this mean day to day? It feels like it boils down to that charging experience. We've all heard good and bad stories. I mean, who hasn't felt that little bit of anxiety pulling up to a public charger just hoping it works?
Exactly. That uncertainty is a major barrier.
A good experience might be finding a charger near shops or a restaurant, right? Somewhere you can actually do something for 30, 40 minutes. But then there are the bad ones, tucked away in a poorly lit corner of a parking lot, or simply broken. And the sources highlighted just how variable quality is. There's a shocking statistic. Only something like 0.7%, less than 1% of public chargers achieve a top score for 247 reliability.
Less than 1 in 100. That's not encouraging for widespread adoption.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, you see some Chinese EV makers already offering, around 250 miles of range, which helps ease daily range anxiety, maybe, but that charging question mark still looms large for longer trips or for people without home charging.
Precisely. The core challenge isn't just making good EVs anymore or even getting the price down eventually. It's about building the entire ecosystem. That means a robust, reliable, convenient charging network that people trust, something that feels as easy or easier than filling up with gas. And, just as vital, it's about building consumer confidence, making range anxiety and charger unreliability things of the past. It needs to be a seamless experience.
Okay, so we've looked at China's top-down, state-led innovation machine and the U.S. EV market, driven more by incentives and private companies, but wrestling with infrastructure and consumer adoption. When you put these two pictures side by side, what does it tell us? It feels like two totally different experiments running in parallel.
It really does. And what's fascinating is the fundamental difference in philosophy. In China, you see this aggressive industrial policy, massive state funding, direct government steering, subsidies, all aimed at creating specific industries, picking winners, driving innovation from the top. It's like meticulous gardening. The state chooses the seeds, prepares the soil, waters carefully.
Very planned, very strategic.
Exactly. Then you look at the U.S. EV market. It's more market-driven, generally speaking, relying on consumer incentives, those tax credits, and letting private companies like Tesla, Ford, Rivian battle it out. The government acts more as a facilitator, setting rules like emissions standards, providing some funding for chargers, but not directly building the companies. It's more like preparing fertile ground and seeing which plants grow strongest on their own.
Two very different ways to encourage growth.
Very different. But here's the interesting part. Despite those differences, both approaches end up facing remarkably similar core challenges. How do you foster real breakthrough innovation, not just incremental improvements or overcapacity? How do you get widespread adoption beyond the early adopter crowd? And crucially, how do you build the robust infrastructure, whether it's semiconductor fabs in China or charging stations in the U.S. needed to support the whole thing?
So different paths, but similar mountains to climb.
Pretty much. Both models are striving for technological progress and market success, but using very different toolkits. And each toolkit comes with its own set of trade-offs: speed versus efficiency, control versus flexibility, short-term gains versus long-term sustainability.
So, zooming out, why should someone listening care about these different global strategies? How does it affect us? Well, understanding these contrasting models, the state-led versus the market incentivized, gives you really valuable context. Context for future tech developments worldwide. It helps you make sense of global economic shifts. You can start to see why certain industries might boom in one region versus another. And it even helps understand the kinds of products and services heading your way. It just hammers home that there's no single right way to innovate. Different places find different paths, and seeing those paths helps us understand our shared global future much more clearly. So, quite a journey today. We've navigated the complexities of China's state-backed innovation drive, with those new productive forces and the economic challenges that come with them. And we've explored the U.S. electric vehicle landscape, the push for adoption hitting the realities of consumer concerns and infrastructure gaps. It definitely leaves us with something to think about, doesn't it? Considering how much government action shapes innovation everywhere, from China's huge industrial funds and direct involvement to significant U.S. tax credits and emissions rules pushing EVs. You have to wonder how much of the free market is really left driving major technological leaps these days. And maybe the bigger question for you to ponder is, what kind of innovation do you think will ultimately deliver the best results for humanity? Is it the top-down strategic planning model, or is it bottom-up consumer demand and private sector competition, something to mull over until our next deep dive?